Another week, another episode of Fireside Knicks. Bryce Gelman alongside Brett Hanfling. As always, and today we are joined by a very special guest. Please welcome onto the show Ben Ritholtz, contributor for Knicks Film School and the Strickland. Ben, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm glad we could get this together. I'm a big fan of the work you guys do, and always fun to kind of chat, especially after a wonderful loss like last night's loss, right?
Yeah, and before we get into the game in basketball, for people who don't know Ben, I just want to say he's one of the best Twitter basketball follows on Twitter, and more specifically, one of the preeminent highlight thread analysis. Someone's probably said that more eloquently, but Ben goes above let's just say the average Twitter user who might just throw out Brunson is him, play Obi, fire tips. Ben goes a little more sophisticated, puts in a little bit of work, throws some highlights together, and I've been following you for a little bit, so pumped to have you on.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I try to get above the fray a little bit and bring a little bit more of a kind of a film breakdown angle to things instead of the narrative angle that often dominates the Twitterverse, as it were. So thank you. I appreciate that compliment.
Yeah, I mean, we need that to balance out all the other fray, which I'm a part of. Listen, I'm a part of. I threw a.
You're the king of that. You're the king of that, Brett. Jalen Brunson's him. Jalen Brunson's him.
He is him. I threw the Brunson. The dog X-ray might be like the most typical what I'm talking about. But quickly before we get into the basketball, and we're not going to dive deep. Can you just tell us a little about your background and why people should trust you? I'm telling them they should, but trust your basketball knowledge.
Man, sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much this qualifies me for anything, but I was a college athlete. I played D3 basketball at Yeshiva for 4 years. I was good. It's a D3 level, so take that. I think it's really high level basketball. Others might disagree. Maybe I was D3 him. I'm not sure. I don't know if I had enough team success to be him, but that's what I did. Yeah. So that's where I played and had some success there. And then after I played, I coached. I was the assistant coach for that team. Coach now is Elliot Steinmetz, who's had a crazy amount of success with the program. They've gone to the tournament in recent years. So right after I graduated, I took a year off and then came back and coached with him for a couple of years. And certainly learned a lot about film breakdown, and because that's largely what I did for the team. And so that's my basketball background. Yeah. So I don't know. You can decide for yourself what qualifies me to put out film threads on Twitter. But that's where it all comes from.
To second what Brett said, you do offer some of the best analysis on Twitter. You could check out Ben at Ben Ritholtz NBA. It says it right on the screen here, but just in case you didn't see it, check him out on Twitter. All right, let's get straight into this.
And we did not promise Ben that we would say all this for him to come on.
This is not planned. None of this
is a very long introduction. I just want to talk. I'm uncomfortable over here. Let's talk about
let's talk basketball, Brett.
You have to clip these first few minutes and just.
Yeah, all right. Put it in my bio.
All right, so let's get into this finally. Jesus. All right, the Knicks blew another close one last night. They lost to the Lakers, and we were. Obviously, Brett and I were discussing this loss throughout the night, and then obviously in this morning. But the first thing I think that we need to touch on here, and something that I think you were tweeting about as well, is RJ Barrett was non-existent in this game. Did not play most of the fourth quarter, and then all of overtime. After the game, says, "I got nothing to say." What do you make of what happened last night with RJ?
Yeah, they're in a tough spot right now because the coach is going to insist on playing a 5 at all times, and Randle's going to close every game, and that leaves you with and Brunson's going to close every game. So that leaves you with Quickley, with the emergence of Emmanuel Quickley as I think a true and real 6 Man of the Year candidate. The emergence of Quentin Grimes this year as kind of like an essential piece just in terms of like what he does and what he offers as in contrast to the rest of the lineup. Like he's very important to what they do because he's a quick decision maker and he can guard at the point of attack, the things that he does really well. And then you have RJ Barrett, who's like supposed to be your foundational piece, the guy you just signed to a whole lot of money, the guy you drafted 3rd overall, etc. they're all fighting for two positions to close games. And this is not the first time that this has happened. And the reaction, I think probably because they lost, has been by far the loudest that it's been when RJ hasn't closed a game, but this is not the first time. And there have been times where he comes in with like 2.5 minutes left and IQ gets pulled. And that's like a weird rotation because like you're putting him in pretty cold there with a very little. That happened in the Cleveland game, for example, where RJ came back in with like 2.5 left. And so it's just a dilemma right now. I think it's very reasonable to say that Quickley and Grimes deserve to close that game. I thought they were better than RJ throughout the game, even though Grimes didn't make a three. I just thought, RJ outside of one little flurry of a couple buckets in a row just didn't really have it on either end. And so it's a problem. It's a problem. And clearly the way he reacted last night, which I think is very unlike RJ Barrett, to kind of make more of it than he had to post game. Like he could have just got kind of snuck out of there without having said anything. Understanding.
But as someone who gets signed to such a big extension, I think for him personally thinks that he deserves to play in those moments. But as you said, just had a terrible game. And going forward, like, is that, I don't know, is what he said telling of what you think he's going to be in the future, specifically talking this season?
I think right now Tibbs is going to go with the guys who are playing well out of those three. I think he's making it a game-to-game decision.
Yeah, which is a change because
it is.
RJ had that, I think it was a 6-game stretch where he was by far the worst player in the league. We were coming on here. I was hot every time, and he was going with RJ for the end of those games. And that was a time where now I can't remember if I wanted Grimes. I think Quickley probably wasn't. I wanted Grimes to finish those games. So it is a change. But to your point, this was the loudest time. RJ has been the golden boy for both Tibbs, definitely, and fans. I mean, it's obviously soured a little bit this year. But overall, he's the guy we drafted 3. He's the highest pick we've had in years, and he's the highest potential player we've had in a long time. So he's been that golden boy that people were hoping could be a top 10, 15 player down the road. And, I think most people don't think that's going to happen. But so this was, you said it happened for. It hasn't. He didn't play the whole last 10 minutes of the third quarter and overtime. I don't think it's happened this
fourth and overtime.
Right. Well, there happened to be overtime tonight. Yes. Well, right. He didn't get reinserted in overtime. I don't know if it was like this many minutes. I'm just saying he hasn't closed every game. But I think what's happened is, like, for RJ is that Brunson comes in and is just a better guy to give the ball to than RJ is. Right. So it's like, we're not going to have that choice. Yeah. Well, now, okay, if Brunson's going to have the ball and Randle are going to have the ball, what are the best pieces around those two guys? And I kind of get having it be more of the like quick shooting, quick decision-making types like IQ and Grimes. And then the last element of it is, like, I think RJ was largely trusted. Okay, but at least he's going to give you like some big wing size and toughness on the defensive end. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which is really important in a team, especially with Jalen Brunson, who's so small. Like, you need some size on the perimeter. But like, I think all of us have kind of come to realize in this year that IQ and Grimes, I don't care about their size. They're both better defenders right now than RJ Barrett. Just straight up. They just are. And if RJ's not giving you that value on the defensive end, that he's a bit redundant right now on the offensive end with that starting group, because you have Randle and you have Brunson who are going to soak up a lot of the usage. I think it's a defensible position to say that RJ is the least valuable person of those three in that starting lineup. And so it's unfortunate, but that's what's come out here.
And this has been one of our biggest questions, especially at the start of the season when RJ, obviously one of the most poor starts that we've seen from any guy that had as much potential as RJ has in the past this season. What do you think that has caused this defensive lapse as much as it has happened?
Really hard to say. He's never been a great defender or anything, but I thought 2 years ago there was just a requisite level of intensity and toughness, and he just seems very slow, frankly, this season. And I don't know if he added strength, added bulk. I don't know, but it definitely seems like really unbalanced and slow defensively. So that on closeouts he's getting blown the hell by. When he leans one way, there was one play last night where he was guarding Russ coming down, and there was like half a screen, and he just leaned toward the screen, and Russ was like at the rim before RJ even reacted. I think RJ still does a pretty good job with like bigger wings, like the Tatums of the world, and I think we'll hopefully get a chance to see him against Kawhi and Paul George in a couple games. There, I think he's more comfortable, but you put him on any kind of quickness, or you have him kind of trying to close out on the second side or on the weak side, he's just struggled. I don't have an explanation as much as it's just an observation that he hasn't been good.
Yeah, I think it goes pretty hand in hand with the offense, even though he can still get buckets. They're tough buckets, and he still can because he still has good footwork and he still knows his way around the rim, but he's not beating guys. He, almost half of his shots are he's trying to draw some contact, or he does draw some contact. His handle is not as tight as these other one-on-one players, so I think it goes hand in hand. To give RJ a break, let's talk a bit, and not to beat this dead horse either, but let's talk about the end of the game. And I don't want to go crazy because it is just one play. They could have won the game.
Just one play. How many other games does it happen? Just one play.
It is just one play, though. Like, it is. I mean, they could have won the game other ways. They could have won the game in overtime. But that being said, Tommy Beer and I'm sure Macri put out a stat also about the clutch numbers of Randle and Brunson. And they're really stark. They're not just like, I think in clutch time, which is like the last 5 minutes of game, 5 or less points, they're wildly different. I think, Ben, you put something out. Tibbs said that there were 3 options on the play. There definitely weren't.
I don't understand.
When was the last time the Knicks ran a set play at the end of a game? He's talking about that there are 3 options.
Unless he means pass, dribble, and shoot, which I guess is 3 options. I don't know what he means by 3 options. I mean, I guess maybe there was an option for Brunson to get the ball back on the inbounds. To me, based on the movement around him, it looked very clearly like a straight inbounds to Randle. Brunson cleared out, and it was go to work. There were no options. I don't know.
And there was a courtside video that actually came out from a fan that he's right up against Randle, and Randle never looks to see if like the handoff is an option. I maybe Tibbs mentioned it, a passing mention in the huddle, but Randle did not even look. Which and I don't know if I still don't think that's the right call, but it does go against what Tibbs said. I don't know. I don't know if you have anything fresh to inject into it.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is it's not just the clutch numbers; it's also the isolation numbers. So if you're gonna run an isolation, which I might have my issues with anyway, but a lot of possessions end in isolation, end the games if teams switch a lot. So they purposely put LeBron on Brunson so that even if there was a Randle Brunson screen, for example, they would just switch that action. I thought you could have brought Quickley into the action maybe and brought one of their worst defenders in, just like run a quick ghost screen. There was plenty of time. 4.5 is a long time. So I didn't really see the need for there to just be like one action isolation. If you're going to run one action isolation, it's not just the clutch numbers. The isolation numbers are way disparate. I mean, like Brunson's a really, really top-notch isolation scorer. The stats back it up. Randle's not. And so
a clutch player.
And both of those things combined, I thought it was totally nonsensical. I just didn't understand the idea at all.
It did not make sense. It did not make sense at all. And I know that Brett and I didn't really want to touch too much on it, but I feel like that is a pressing topic, especially with the fact that the Knicks have not been great when they have the ball into either a tie game or they're down 1 or 2 points. Like that's an issue they've been having. It's easy to stop a guy. It's easy to stop it's not easy to stop a Donovan Mitchell, but they've been way better, I think, in that situation of the Knicks have a lead. They need to get a stop. They'll get the stop.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not, they don't have a creative playbook in these scenarios. I think that's just a Tibbs thing. It is what it is.
Yeah.
What I will say, and I always, it's never just a coach, because no matter who the player is, if you have the ball, you can make a better decision. The reality is that LeBron came so far over on that play, and it just would have taken a quick pass by Julius, who never even looked anywhere but towards the rim. And I think Brunson gets ahead of steam downhill. It's going to collapse the defense, and something good's going to come out of that. So even with an uncreative set like that, the execution on the players could have been a lot better to generate a better look. Like Randle kind of did the worst possible thing, which was dribble baseline into a trap of 2 of like at their peaks the best defenders ever. Like it's just not a great place to be.
If Randle does kick it and Brunson hits either a 3 or like a running floater to win the game versus LA and LeBron, that's his signature moment in the Garden as a Knick right there. I mean,
he's just missed on a couple, right? I mean, he's had.
And he hasn't had that yet. He has not had that moment yet. He's missed like 2 or 3 at the buzzer shots. One against Portland. I forgot the other 2, but those are opportunities that he needs to have. He needs to have the ball at the end of the game. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and then tack on to that at the end also how the two of them played that night. It's like there's just no argument for Randle to be the one to make that decision, but here we are.
Yeah. Okay. So, speaking of Brunson, obviously an incredible game last night. He put up 37 points. What has Brunson meant to this team? Like, take Brunson off this team. Like, where are they at right now?
Oh boy. Oh man. I don't want to think about that. Where are they? I think they're probably like behind Toronto.
Yeah.
Like he's been a stabilizing force for them. I think he's brought the best out of Julius. I think having someone who it's clear, despite Tibbs' late game decisions, it's clear needs to have the ball more than Julius, I think has been really good for Julius. Like, I don't think Randle should ever be the primary decision maker on a team. And so kind of removing him from that role, I think has had a really good effect. Look, the team's played very well offensively this year. The numbers say so, despite, I think, good, not amazing talent on the offensive end, but Brunson's kind of locked everything in place. He's I think we've kind of realized as the year's gone on, he's not a kind of a prototypical point guard. He's definitely a score first point guard. The ball doesn't generate a ton of beautiful offense, ball movement. Not really who he is. What he is impossible to stay in front of, will break down your defense, will make a lot of shots, especially floaters, has improved his 3-point percentage, and on a much more difficult diet of 3-pointers. He's taking a lot more off the dribble this year, with less spacing than he had last year. So it's like he's been really everything that they could have possibly asked for, and like the contract looks at this point like a tremendous bargain.
Oh yeah, big time. And this guy could be an all-star. I don't think anyone was saying that at the start of the season and the offseason when everyone was saying how big of an overpay it was. To be fair, I'm going to call myself out. I thought it was somewhat of an overpay, considering the fact that he's an undersized guard. He offensively was not the main guy on the last team, and taking over as the primary ball handler on another team. I mean, there were a bunch of options. I just wasn't feeling too excited about that acquisition. But now there's a realistic case for him to be a reserve on the All-Star team. We'll find out. When is that? Is that today or is that tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
That we're going to find out tomorrow. Yeah.
Tomorrow, TNT. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is like, look, I think more than maybe anything else I've said is like that charge he took last night.
Incredible.
I think LA very intentionally wanted him in the weak side corner when they ran that AD LeBron pick and roll, because they knew New York wasn't going to switch. They knew that they'd be able to have that pocket pass, and then it would be Brunson sliding over on AD, who can't contest, right? So I think that was a well-designed play by LA. The only way that Jalen Brunson can stop that at 6 feet is to take a really tough charge, get there early enough. It was a magnificent defensive play. Like, he's not a good defensive player because he's tiny, but he brings a toughness and a know-how. He's smart. He draws as many charges as anyone in the league. And that play was kind of like a classic representation of what he brings there. So, yeah, he's awesome. He's great. Great to have him aboard.
So we might have to mute this part out. I didn't see anyone say it, and I'm not going to harp on it, but I'm not so sure it was a charge. But either way, he sticks his body in there. He sticks his body in there. He's second in the NBA in charges.
They reviewed it. And
I know,
especially considering the fact they had – okay. Brett, they had Scott Foster on the game. LeBron has gotten screwed so many games in a row. You think that they'd screw up. Listen, with all the things that have gone against LeBron, you think that without a shadow of a doubt that they'd call that a block. I mean, like, trust me, they were looking for every possible way for that to be a blocking foul. It was a charge in every single view they showed.
I'm just saying, if I was a Lakers fan, you would have heard from me. But because I'm not.
Well, hold on. But on the first half, LeBron just comes down court and plows over Brunson's face, and they just ignore it. So we were owed one there anyway.
He was pissed with that one also. He
should have been, because even though it's a stupid rule that's a charge, it shouldn't be. But it is the rule that it's a charge. So I don't even know what the ref was possibly looking at that he didn't call that one.
I tweeted the one at the end of the game. He took it on a freight train. But that one in the first half, LeBron was actually a freight train coming, 50 feet down the court. So let's talk a little more general. So Knicks are 27-25. Is that right?
Yeah, I think
27.
So.
Yes.
27-25, sitting in the 7th seed. Trade deadline is approaching. Listen, there's talks about OG Anunoby. Sadiq Bey's name is thrown around. I guess my question to you is, 1, do you think the Knicks make some sort of trade? 2, quick thoughts on OG. And 3, is there someone out there no one's talking about that you might like? And I know I threw it a lot of you. Just take it wherever you want to take it.
Sure. If I had to guess, yes, they make a trade. I think someone will be taking those Deuce McBride minutes by the deadline, and I think that those Deuce McBride minutes, if that player is good enough, will exist both in the first and second half. Right now, Deuce basically only plays in the first half and like maybe gets a minute in the second. So my guess is that they get somebody, whether it's the names that are out there, whether it's a Gordon or a Malik Beasley or Sadiq Bey. OG's kind of the home run of that list, but someone to kind of fill that ninth man role. I could see them potentially trying to upgrade at the center spot. I don't, because we love Mitch. He's played really well this year. He's obviously essential to what they do. But I wonder if they're nervous about his health, and he gets these injuries all the time. And the way that Sims is unfortunately, like last night was, I think, the worst Sims has played all year. And you wonder if they, based on how Tibbs plays, where he always has a center on the floor, if they maybe try to pick up someone off like the center scrap heap out there somewhere for like nothing, for like a second round pick. I could see that, but I do imagine that they're going to try to fill that Deuce role with somebody else. Any names that nobody's talking about?
It's tough to
tough to identify. I mean, like it's not like nobody's talking about this, but I feel like it was talked about more a couple of weeks ago. Like, I wonder if the Duarte thing is something that's on the Knicks radar.
I like him.
What does he add to this team? Like, there's
shooting.
I
know. And by the way, he has shot badly this year, but I think everyone thought he'd be. I mean, the Knicks wanted to draft
such a logjam of wings that are scorers on the team, and Fournier is not getting any minutes. That's your shooting. You just can't play defense.
Yeah.
You just cannot play. He's a defensive non-factor.
Right. So I think Duarte, and the way where I've seen him play, I think he's a decent defender and could be a good defender as he develops. The shot needs to come around, obviously, for him to give any value. But I could see, and the Knicks wanted to draft him. I know that. So I could see them trying to reinvest there. I mean, if that's part of like an Obi package or whatever, we'll see. I don't think they're going to sell on Obi right now. I mean, this can't go on much longer. The way that the Obi Randle Tibbs triangle of hell is unfolding, like, it just doesn't make any sense to play this guy 10 minutes a night. It doesn't help anybody.
I mean, we talked about this last week with Obi. It's just like it's a spiral downward because the less minutes he plays, the less confident he is. And
it's an impossible situation. It's an impossible situation.
Ben, let me bring this up. Because
what's up?
I think Brett might flip out about this. Why shouldn't they trade Randle?
Oh,
like give me reasons why, with the value that he has right now, he's averaging 24, 11, and 4. Like, well, give me like 2 reasons why bringing about the value that he bring right now would be a negative factor going forward for the team.
You're preaching to the choir a little bit. I'm going to tell you, Bryce. I'm not sure his value will ever be higher than it is right now.
Thank you.
And he is he's a frustrating, very talented ball player. I agree with you in theory. I think they should be exploring. I don't know if they're not, and I don't know what the market is. The one thing about Randle that's different from a guy like OG. Because I think Randle, would you say, is the better player, but OG is a much easier fit. Like, Randle to try to plug in a power forward who can't really guard wings, but also cannot protect the rim, who is a decent outside shooter, but really needs a lot of usage to be effective. Like, where's the really good team willing to give up assets for that player? That's
Miami?
Hard to find.
Miami, maybe. I think he could fit in as a 3. As a third option on another team.
As a third option, maybe. I mean, you slot him in at the 4. You slot him in at the 4 with Jimmy at the 3. That's not bad.
Bam center. Realistically, who are you getting from that? They're not going to get Hero. Realistically, Randle's value, I think it's just his contract that's holding him back at this point. The fact
I don't think the contract's looked at as such a negative asset the way he's played this year, though. I really don't. Especially with the cap going up.
How many rumors have you been seeing that the Knicks are going to get a first or maybe 2 first-round picks because that's how good the guy is.
Yeah, I don't think the rumors have been out there because I don't think the Knicks are shopping him.
It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
I agree with you. Now, reasons why they aren't. Well, here are the reasons why they aren't. Because their owner just got on a radio show and said that they have to make the playoffs, basically. And we often divorce that from like what we want from the front office, but in the real world, right? Like their front office, that's their boss, and his directive is what goes. And so if they're instructed to make the playoffs and they don't feel like any Randle deal is going to bring back equal playing value for this year, then they're not going to make that deal as they're on the fringes of the playoffs right now. They're just not. And like, that's maybe a shame because there should maybe be a longer term outlook with the talent on this team and where they need to be going. But
and the talent in the draft,
like,
there's just so much talent going forward that the Knicks in the past. The Knicks, no, of course, but the amount of talent the Knicks have missed out on these past few drafts, where they've been mid. That's the thing. And in that, the year they went 41-31, that was one of the top drafts that we will see. In the past, the Knicks, they were the 4 seed.
2 things. I got to defend myself because you call me out. It's not that I'm against a Randle trade. It's one, I don't know if I have the energy to talk about it. You have to warn me next time because I need to properly prepare because it's this big
you should just be prepared. Like this should be something that you think about at sleep.
I need to drink fluids before. Okay. And then it's exactly what Ben said. It's like real world has like conflicts of interest all over the place. Tibbs and Trajan Randle is a conflict of interest. If we don't make the playoffs, Tibbs is probably not here. Leon Rose and Trajan Randle is as shitty as it sounds. It's probably a conflict of interest because we don't make the playoffs. He might be gone. If we don't make the playoffs for 2 years, he's definitely gone. So it's you wish you would have this perfect like system of always do the best for now and the future, but it's just not there. And I don't think
not with this owner. There's a reason that we've been unsuccessful for the majority of his tenure, a vast majority, right? I mean, this is what it is living in Knicks world. Is
there a less hopeful fandom out there? I think being a Lions fan, maybe Commanders too, even though that ship has sailed, I guess you could say. He's going to sell the team. So
I can't have this conversation in the afternoon. This is too early for this kind of conversation, Bryce.
Yeah. But I could have it all day, any day. It's just so unfortunate that we spend the majority of our sports fandom rooting for a team that we know is not going to do anything.
And because Ben, me and Bryce, we're pretty different, our outlooks, just to because I know we're wrapping up and you're leaving on that note. I'm just going to leave on the note. We're 27-25. We should, and it's past years, you could say this and it might not be true. We should have at least 3 to 5 more wins. It's easily, and that's probably light with some of the losses with Dallas and Portland and I'm
Chicago.
This could be a 30-22 team with maybe getting a little help at the deadline. I don't want to overdo it, but Ben, which side are you closer to? The Bryce doom and gloom or me? Like, you know what? We have above 500 team, all our draft picks, an okay salary position.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated question. There's a lot of factors, and I think you have to. The Donovan Mitchell conversation is definitely intertwined here, because when you're looking at like outlook, and I think that moment, that last summer, is a turning point moment for the franchise, one way or another. Especially if they can't get a star in the next several years, we will be looking at that for potentially a decade, and so, that needs to be part of the conversation too. But look, I tend to stay more positive about this team because, as you said, they have a lot of draft equity. I don't think they've signed and like their bad contracts are all coming off the books. They have a lot of good young talent. Like, I think if you think about the emergence here of IQ and Grimes, and by the way, RJ, I know he's taking a lot of crap right now. The reality is also that he's actually significantly improved as a scorer this year. We don't like to talk about it. It hasn't been drastic improvements, but there have been clear improvements in terms of his percentage at the rim, his percentage in floater range. He's more efficient this year than he's been in his whole career, other than an outlier 3-point shooting season 2 years ago, which a lot of people had. But like, he's been a better scorer this season. So like, he's improving, even though it's maybe not as quick of development as we want. but like there's a lot of improving young pieces on this team that you should be excited about. The way Quickley's playing right now is a revelation. He's been so good. And so, there's a lot of good things going on. There's a lot of good things going on with assets picking up value at the very least, even if they're not going to be here long term. And so that's your positive side. And I think, look, it depends on your outlook in general as a fan, because some people are just like, and I don't begrudge anyone for either position, but some people are like, unless we're making the exact right steps to win a title, I'm like out and I'm annoyed and I don't like this. And then there are fans who are like, okay, but like this team's pretty good. They're putting out a really entertaining product every night. They're playing a million close games. I'm like on the edge of my seat, even if I'm frustrated half the time. Like this isn't freaking 2016, right? Like this is a team worth rooting for. They play extremely hard. They've gotten blown out like twice all season. It's like a very representative team. You can be proud of this team. So like, it's an approach thing.
It's a fair point to make.
I try to keep it on the ladder just because it's more fun to enjoy it. But I totally get it that there is a bit of a feeling of like what's the pathway to being a contender here and how long is that going to take?
You don't think
that's frustrating.
I don't think about that part. Because then once you think about that part,
that's the thing. If you're rooting for a team, that's just got to be something at the back of your mind. Like, does this team have a chance to be successful going forward? And the answer is a no. So
the answer
I'm just gonna. It's a no. It's a no, Brett. And we'll have this fight every week on this show. Trust me, going forward. That's for sure. But Ben, really appreciate you hopping on the podcast. As I said before, you can check him out at Ben Ritholtz NBA on Twitter. Like Brett and I said, there's a lot of good stuff on there, and I've certainly learned a lot in the past few weeks of following you. So Ben, appreciate everything you do for the Knicks community. And
thanks a lot, guys. You guys are the best. Appreciate you having me on.
Of course, and for Bryce, he's Brett. See you guys next week.
Take care, guys.